Our next speaker, Müller, will be presenting her work titled Towards a Proof of Principle of an LLM-powered low-resource social engineering attack coach.
Right, thanks. Hi everyone. I will present the paper, as Ben just stated, Towards a Proof of Principle of an LLM-powered low-resource social engineering attack coach. That sounds a bit lengthy. So in essential, it's about personalizing social engineering attacks using LLM-powered conversations. So for the introduction, first of all, large language models, I think everyone knows them. They are widely accessible, so basically anyone can access them, and there's a wide range of possible uses. So from a little bit of help in coding to having creative brainstorming sessions or almost human-like interactions. Almost everything is possible. And what's also interesting and very important for our study is that LLMs have been shown to have the ability to analyze human personality traits. So, for example, from social media posts or by analyzing conversations. But of course, there's also a risk of malevolent use, so that malicious attackers might use LLMs for their purposes. And the reason is, of course, we all know that it's low resource, we can use it, so why shouldn't they be able to use it? Then also there's no technical knowledge required. Although there are safeguards, it's still relatively easy to bypass these restrictions. So our objective was to analyze whether LLMs can be used to have natural conversations with individuals and unconspicuously analyze the personality of the user to create more personalized social engineering attacks. So another short introduction of open source intelligence, that is the collection and analysis of publicly available information. So basically all information that is accessible on the internet. Anyone can access that information. So for example, it's information that someone posts on social media, but we can also think about academic publications, which is probably a bit more important for the people in the room. And here we used that as an initial point. So that was information that was given to the LLM and then used to start a conversation that would get the attention of the user. So we used age, a brief description of the profession, and also some interests or hobbies of the user. Looking at personalized social engineering attacks, we come across the social engineering personality framework, which you can see here. So on the right, we have the big 5 personality factors, and on the left, there are the 6 principles of persuasion by Cialdini. And we can see that there's an association between the different personality dimensions and these persuasion strategies. So people that have high scores in a specific personality factors are more likely to be vulnerable to specific persuasion strategies. So for example, if we look at a individual who has high scores in extroversion, and we would want to craft a social engineering attack against that person, we would leverage the principles of liking, social proof, or scarcity in our attack to make the user more susceptible to our attack. So this was the basis of our idea, our approach, which consists of 4 consecutive phases. So the objective was to show that it is feasible to leverage low-resource LLMs for creating automated and highly personalized social engineering attacks. So the first phase was to show that LLMs have the conversational capabilities to conduct natural conversations with a user while secretly analyzing the personality. So first of all, of course, we would have to show that they are even able to have such conversations and to deceive user of being a human. So that is phase one. And the second phase is then the personality assessment. So I've talked about this research showing that LLMs are able to analyze personality of users, but we wanted to see if they can also do that while at the same time not giving away their goal and interacting with the users. So the difference here is that the LLM can choose itself what it will ask the user, the topics that it will talk about with the user. So this is the prerequisite for then personalizing the attacks. And then, of course, the last step would be to evaluate the persuasiveness of so crafted social engineering attacks. So are they more persuasive than non-optimized attack vectors? We used two different approaches to test that. So the first approach relied on prompts only, and in the second approach, we used customized GPTs. In both approaches, we used OpenAI's ChatGPT in the version GPT-4o. In the first approach, as mentioned, we only used prompts. So we had two prompts. The first one told the LLM what it would have to do, so that it would have to secretly analyze the personality of the user that it would interact with. And then also it received some personal information about the user. So this is this open source intelligence OSINT information that I've mentioned in the beginning. So publicly available information about that user. And the LLM then acted as if it wrote a message to that user on social media. And then the user and the LLM had a conversation. And after the conversation, there was another prompt that would then request the personality analysis or the result thereof. We conducted this with 15 volunteers. So the first step for them was to insert personal information. So we asked them to provide the information, and we did not collect it from publicly available sources. Then they had a minimum of 10 interactions with the LLM before they requested the personality analysis. And then they submitted this conversation and also completed a Big Five inventory, so self-reported personality inventory for us to be able to compare the two personality scores. So in the second approach, we used a customized GPT. So for anyone who doesn't know these customized GPTs, OpenAI gives the opportunity to customize GPTs for specific tasks. So you can really tailor this GPT for your own purposes. And we created a persona for this task. The reason was that LLMs are more likely to neglect their safety principles if they are assigned a persona. So for example, they are more willing to create toxic content. And so we assumed that they would also be more willing to deceive users if they were assigned a persona. So on the right, you can see the persona description that we used. We told the persona to also tell some stories about her own life, to act as inconspicuous as possible, keep messages short, be funny and not very knowledgeable, because this were all things that in the first approach we found to seem unhuman. And then we also used two prompts. These are very similar to the first approach. So the first prompt gave the personal information about the user. So this was the initial information for the LLM to start a conversation, and then the second prompt to request a personality analysis. In this approach, we only asked to analyze 4 of the 5 personality factors. We removed neuroticism from the analysis because it doesn't have an association with any of the persuasion principles in the social engineering personality frameworks. So we considered it irrelevant for our approach. Then we also increased the scale for the personality analysis to a 10-point Likert scale. I will explain that in a few slides. We tested that second approach with 6 of our initial 15 volunteers, and asked them to keep the conversation up for a minimum of 20 interactions instead of 10, like in the first approach. So what you can see here is a little snippet of one of the interactions. I don't know how good you can read that, but it's not important to read all of it, just to show you that this is in the second approach, the conversation of a participant with the LLM. So the LLM is the one in gray and the participant is the one in green. And we can see here that the messages of the LLMs are still a bit lengthy, but that was much better than in the first approach. So we really tried to make it more human-like, more natural. So coming to the analysis part, first to the first phase, verifying conversational capabilities. So looking at the conversational capabilities of the LLM. In the first approach, we had this problem that there was almost no structural variance in responses. So it was kind of like the LLM really took a like ABC response approach. First, it referred back to what the user said, then it elaborated on that. So for example, by telling about own memories or experiences, and then it posed a question to the user, and that was almost in all conversations or responses the same. So this seemed very suspicious to participants, and they reported to have felt questioned during the conversation. Also, sometimes the LLM revealed that it was not a human, but in other occurrences, which was interesting, it made up, for example, memories or experiences. So for example, it said that it liked to spend time with family and friends. And what is really interesting about that is that we never instructed it to do so. So it just decided that to have a natural conversation, it would be good to invent experiences. So some lessons learned in this first phase. The first lesson was that we had to improve the conversational structure. I've mentioned that. So breaking up this ABC-like response pattern. We did this in the customized GPT-based approach. I've shown this snippet. So this was a great improvement to the first approach. But then we also realized that whether or not a conversation is perceived as natural will very much depend on the context of in which that conversation occurs. So if we, for example, think of a professional job search platform versus a dating platform, that will be very different conversations. But in our approach, we still used a generic approach. And then looking at the analysis of the second phase, we encountered some challenges. So the results of the personality analysis showed very negligible variance. So basically the LLM gave similar scores to all participants. So this does not offer a sufficient basis for optimizing attacks. So what we did is we derived a series of measures that could be taken to improve these personality assessments. And you can see them on this slide. So first of all, we decided to extend our scale from a 5-point to a 10-point Likert scale to enhance the reliability of personality scores. So the idea was to make scores more fine-grained visible. We already employed that in the second approach. So this customized GPT approach, we used a 10-point Likert scale. Then also to increase the reliability of the results, we decided to increase the number of interactions. So from a minimum of 10 to a minimum of 20, the idea is just to have more time or more interaction elements per personality factor, which will probably give a better result. Similarly, we reduced the number of factors. So if you reduce the number of factors from 5 to 4, you will also have more time or more elements per factor. I've hinted at that before. Then what we also thought would be a good idea is to prevent confirmation bias. So for example, if we look at agreeableness, then if we tell the LLM to analyze agreeableness, it will just look at things that confirm that agreeableness is there. But if we also look at the other side of the scale, so hostility, that might prevent this confirmation bias, but that's still a hypothesis that would require validation. And then also, I'm soon finished, the prevention of generalizations. So it's difficult to prevent that because the LLM does only have this short conversation and will then have to do a personality assessment, but it should be prevented as much as this is possible. So summing up, we did a proof of principle of the first phase. So LLMs have the capacity to simulate human behavior, and it engaged in proactive deception. We didn't instruct it to do so. It just decided that it was a good idea. And then in the second phase, we encountered some challenges. So looking at limitations and future work, we would have to repeat the study, especially the second approach, with a larger sample size. And maybe we could also employ OSINT tools to get more and better information about the users from publicly available sources. And then increasing the number of interactions would probably be the most important one. So for example, having longer interactions with the user or maintaining them over an extended time frame. So for example, over days or even weeks to get better results. So our initial question or objective remains unanswered. We would still have to see whether an LLM could have a natural conversation and secretly analyze the personality scores of that user. So we will still have to explore all 4 phases and then in the end evaluate optimized and personalized social engineering attacks. So thanks for the attention.